Crossing parallel worlds in Japan, Shinji Shinawara obtained a notebook called Urban Legend Chronicles. As long as you write urban legends in your notebook, you can make them come true in reality. And Japan in this world lacks many urban legends from previous lives. Flower in the Toilet, Hellgirl, Sadako's Videotape, 8-Foot Lord, Mary's Phone, Qinglong Temple Tunnel, Line of Sight in the Gap, Tenjin Elementary School, Let Me Make the Japanese Devils Dance Around. True Love Group. 875484557, full order required, keywords of the novel. I create urban legends in Tokyo without pop-ups, I create urban legends in Tokyo. Download the complete TXT collection, and I read the latest chapters of Urban Legends in Tokyo. 1, Chapter 1. Sight in the Gap. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Chapter 1 Sight in the Gap Tokyo, Metropolitan Police Department. Uniformed police officers walked in and out, some with relaxed expressions and others with solemnity. Inside the police station, a man and a woman came to an inquiry room. Mr. Nakano's mental state is a bit abnormal. Be careful, I'll be right outside the door. Remember to notify me immediately if you have anything to do. The middle-aged man patted Asako from Shiuen Temple on the shoulder and encouraged, come on. I will, Shinagawa Police Department. Sayako Nishiuanji took a deep breath while wearing an earphone. After entering, simply push the door open. This is a very special inquiry room. The interior of this inquiry room is entirely stacked with snow-white tiles, clean and tidy, like a hole without any gaps. The interior is pitch black and there are no windows. After entering the inquiry room, Asako Nishimoto coughed lightly and turned on the light using his voice. Before speaking, I heard a frightened voice, close the door. Close the door. Do you want to kill me? A man with disheveled hair and an unkempt appearance couldn't help but scream in fear when he saw Asako from Shiuen Temple enter, clearly showing some mental abnormalities. His eyes were red, bloodshot, and his bags were heavy, indicating that he had not slept normally for a long time. My eyes couldn't stop swaying uncontrollably, with panic and fear. At the moment when Asako opened the door at Shiuen Temple, she was like a frightened bird, her veins bulging in both hands, and she quickly covered her eyes, as if she would see something terrifying. I'm sorry. Upon hearing this, Asako Nishimoto quickly closed the door. As you can see in detail, the door of the inquiry room perfectly matched the room. After closing it, there was not even a crack. Sayako Nishimoto looked at Ichiro Nakano and after looking up and down, she tentatively spoke, Mr. Nakano, it's been 5 days now. Are you feeling better? After Asako closed the door, Ichiro Nakano appeared much more normal. He squatted in the corner, heard the sound but didn't look up, closed his eyes, and had no reaction. Mr. Nakano, we know you have encountered something terrifying. But this is the police station, and no one has harmed you. If you keep not explaining the situation to us, it will make it difficult for us to carry out our work. You don't understand, you don't understand. There is a play. Upon hearing Ichiro Nakano speak, Asako Nishimoto's eyes lit up. Nakano Ichiro was taken to this special inquiry room 5 days ago, and the other party called the police themselves. But after being taken to the police station, they found that the other party was on the brink of mental breakdown, and there was no information on how to inquire. The police station invited several psychologists to help the other party recover slightly. Mr. Nakano, only by truthfully telling us the situation can we help you get out of your predicament. I have a few questions for you, can you answer them? As long as there is enough information, the police department can solve the case. Mr. Nakano, you don't have to be so worried. Shiuen Temple Asako slowly approached Nakano Ichiro, but not too close. She crouched down slightly, looking at each other in a gentle tone. After speaking, she didn't hear a response for a while. But she didn't urge, and Ichiro Nakano's current situation is much better than a few days ago, so she naturally can't let the other party be stimulated again. After waiting for a few minutes, Sayuanji Asako showed no impatience and quietly looked at the other person. For a long time, she saw Ichiro Nakano lift his head and her eyes lit up with joy. Nakano. As soon as she spoke, she saw Nakano Ichiro's pupils dilate as if she had seen something terrifying. Ah! Ah! Nakano Ichiro opened his mouth, pointing his finger at Nishiyuki Asako, but the fear in his heart made only dry and meaningless sounds. This fear is too real, as if it could be contagious, making Zaiwansi Asako feel a bit scared in her heart. And the direction pointed by Ichiro Nakano is exactly himself. Or rather, behind oneself at this moment, Shenzi from Shiyuan Temple had goosebumps all over her body, and she dared not look back. No no, 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 no. Subconsciously, she reached out and touched her lips without any abnormality. However, just this action directly shattered Nakano Ichiro's spirit. As if crushing the last straw of the camel, he used both hands and feet, wanting to quickly leave the woman in front of him. As soon as I got up, before taking 2 steps, I fell to the ground. As soon as I looked up, I saw the shadow of the wall tiles. Besides myself, there is also that woman. He saw Shiyuan Temple Asako slowly approaching him, but what frightened him was that there was a bloodshot eyeball between the woman's lips. This eyeball gradually widened Asako Nishimoto's mouth, lifting it up but not fully covering it. In the gaps next to the mouth, small eyeballs appeared one after another, swaying and dripping. Afterwards, he seemed to notice something and turned his gaze entirely to Ichiro Nakano. Don't. Being stared at directly, making Nakano Ichiro collapse. As soon as he spoke, he came to a sudden halt. He saw within the shadow of the tiles that he had just opened his mouth. In the depths of his throat, a gaze peered through the tiles to observe him. That's another eyeball. The last string of the spirit is destroyed at this moment. Nakano Ichiro went crazy, reaching his hand into his throat and frantically digging, trying to dig out this damn eyeball. Only by destroying these eyeballs can he live a normal life. Shiyuan Temple Asako looked at the scene in horror. She fell to the ground, unable to move due to fear, and could only speak with a trembling voice. Xin Chuan Police Department. Come in quickly. As soon as the words fell, the Shinagawa Police Department rushed into the room. Mr. Nakano, calm down. Upon seeing the crazy scene of Ichiro Nakano, the Shinagawa Police Department felt a chill in his heart and shouted, "Someone." At this moment, Ichiro Nakano looked at his own shadow inside the tile. He leaned slightly and his normal voice had become hoarse and unpleasant to hear. There's still one in his ear, he said. Half an hour later, Ichiro Nakano's body was carried out. Watching this scene, the new Sichuan Police Department looked gloomy. Returning to the office, he looked at a photo on the table, which showed a huge eyeball. His face was somewhat solemn. This was already the 9th person this month to die so strangely. Does hypnosis kill people? End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Youshe, Part 1. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2 Youshe, Part 1, Approaching the afternoon, Sakuraki Private High School. The sun is still hanging high in the sky, and the weather is clear. The school bell suddenly rang, and soon the quiet teaching building became noisy. In Class 1 of Grade 2, Shinji Shinawara, who was lying face down at the end, stood up straight when he heard the school bell, startling the students talking next to him. Before he could pass his dissatisfied gaze over, Shinji Shinawara gave them a gloomy look, making them afraid to speak. After tidying up his things, Shinji Shinawara yawned and walked out of the classroom. Who is this person? I haven't seen him before. Shinji Shinawara, that gloomy man. I don't remember. Normal. This guy sits in the back seat, arrives at school at midnight every day, then sleeps directly on the table, continues to sleep after lunch, and only wakes up after school. He disappears directly after school, and most people in the class are unfamiliar with him. Some, like you, don't even know about his existence. Terrifying. Shinji Shinawara left the classroom, quickly went downstairs, walked through the atrium, and arrived at the nearby building. This 3-story building is a gathering place for clubs, and many club classrooms are located here. He arrived at a classroom on the 2nd floor, looked at the sign hanging at the entrance of the Ghost Society, and pushed the door in directly. Looking at the pitch-black classroom, he instinctively turned on the lights. At the moment the lights lit up, he received 2 dissatisfied gazes. I'm sorry. Shinji Shinawara didn't show any signs of apology, but he still turned off the lights. Junsi, how do I think you're intentional? We're ghosts, people who don't exist in school. Are you looking down on our identity when you turn on the lights? Oh, Shinji Shinawara responded and went straight to the sofa to lie down. He picked up a blanket and covered it. In a few seconds, he fell into a deep sleep. Did you fall asleep? It seems so. That's too impressive, isn't this guy really the reincarnation of Nobita? Junsi's fight was so fierce, it's likely a combination of Pang Hu and De Xiong's reincarnation. Nakamura Nobutaka and Kobayashi Hideki were chatting and laughing, and suddenly the lights lit up again. Just as they were about to curse Shingen Shinji, they suddenly thought that this guy was asleep, wasn't he? Thinking about it, both of them looked out the door with bright eyes. Staring at by 2 dead mansions, Chihiro Shinagawa remained expressionless, but she still asked, is this the ghost department? As she spoke, she looked at the club classroom with suspicion. Discovering that the entire classroom feels like a large bedroom. What catches the eye is the coffee table placed in the center, filled with Feijai happy water and potato chip snacks. On the left is a bookshelf filled with comics and light novels, all of which are made by beautiful girls and various shameful items. 3 computers are side by side next to the bookshelf, indicating that these 2 people have just been playing with computers. Next to the computers are 2 arcade machines. At the forefront is a 100-inch Sony TV, with various controllers and game consoles under it, and a projector next to it. On the right is the sofa, with green potted plants next to it, adding a touch of greenery to the interior. And at the furthest corner is a refrigerator. Ghost department. Are you sure it's not the gaming department? At this moment, Chihiro Shinagawa had some doubts about life. And this is a club. It feels like a small gaming video room. Yes, this is the ghost department. Yukio Nakamura looked up and down at Shinagawa Chiyo, then gave Kobayashi a wild glance in the dark. Seeing this, Xiaozao Shushu's expression became serious, and his originally slightly lewd gaze became gu-bo whooping. He said calmly, do you want to join the department? After hesitating for a moment, Jai Shinagawa nodded. If you want to join the department, you can, but you must tell a horror story that we have not heard of and are satisfied with. This is the requirement for joining the department. The ghost department was established in the first year of high school. According to the ideas of Yutaka Nakamura and Hideki Kobayashi, the ghost itself does not exist, and when placed on people, it is a marginalized figure with extremely low presence. And both of them are dead houses. Despite the development of Japan's anime industry, dead houses are not popular in schools. So they formed this ghost department with a self-deprecating intent. However, there are always some people who are interested in things like ghosts and supernatural beings, so they come knocking on their doors every once in a while to think about joining. For boys who want to join the department, there is no need to talk about anything. For girls, those with low aesthetic standards are also excluded. And girls like Chihiro Shinagawa, who have great looks, naturally welcome them with both hands and feet. However, the test is still necessary, otherwise it is too easy to join the department. Why not join the department if you want and quit if you want? Of course, this so-called test was not originally present. However, in his first year of high school, a boy wanted to join the department but was rejected by two people. As a result, the other person went to report to the teacher and the student union. They were criticized for a while before setting this test. Afterwards, for those who are not satisfied with Nakamura and Kobayashi, no matter how bizarre the story you tell is, as long as it does not meet their requirements, don't try to join the department. So individualistic. Chihiro Shinagawa did not complain in her heart, but rather rejoiced. She has been fond of supernatural things since childhood and enjoys exploring some bizarre stories and urban legends. When she was in junior high school, she founded the Mysterious Research Society at school. I went to high school this year to study at Sakuraki High School. I originally wanted to continue founding a club, but I didn't expect to have a ghost department now. Just when I came over earlier, I thought it was a video game club dressed in ghost skin, but now it seems that I misunderstood. So what horror stories should we tell? In the view of Shinagawa Jai, since these two people are members of the ghost department and have developed for a year, the entire club is still 2 members, so it should be a strict requirement for the members of the department. Otherwise, a club cannot have only 2 people. So these 2 people must be familiar with the circulating urban legends and horror stories, so it's best for her to tell a recently circulated story. She pondered hard and her eyes lit up. Got it. I don't know about the 2 seniors, do you know about a recent photo circulating online? Photos. Yutaka Nakamura and Hideki Kobayashi exchanged a glance, both shaking their heads. In that photo, there is a huge eyeball. Suddenly Shinji Shinawara suddenly sat up from the sofa. Chihiro Shinagawa trembled all over and almost screamed. She had just created an atmosphere and brought herself in, her mind immersed in the story to be told. As a result, Shinji Shinawara suddenly stood up, almost scared to death by the other party. I thought there was a pillow on the sofa, but I didn't expect to be lying alone. Is this? Who is he? Shintai and Shoshu, although also startled, were relatively calm. Xiaozao Shoshu coughed lightly and said, his name is Shinji Shinawara, and he is a member of the club. He was just playing the role of an Egyptian mummy, and now he should be in the stage of pretending to be a corpse. This kind of play is considered a reserved program of our club. After all, we are a ghost club, and it's a bit different from other clubs. Next to him, Yukio Nakamura secretly gave a thumbs up, expressing admiration for Kobayashi's quick response. I see. Chihiro Shinagawa stared at Shinji Shinawara and noticed that his hair was lush, covering his eyes with the hair on his forehead, making him appear arrogant. Through the messy hair, one could see the other person giving her a gloomy look. However, at this point, she was no longer afraid. After all, she had seen various members with strange personalities in junior high school, such as Shingen Shinji, which belonged to the ordinary category. Glancing at Shinagawa Jai, Shinawara Shinji covered himself with a blanket and continued to lie down to sleep. End of this chapter. 3, Chapter 3 Urban Legend Record. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Chapter 3 Urban Legend Record. At around 5 p.m., Shinji Shinawara stood up from the soft sofa and stretched lazily. Later, he looked at the 2 people sitting in front of the computer, took a can of happy water from the coffee table, and curiously walked behind them. What are you doing? Find a photo, Zayazayashu said. When you were sleeping just now, there was a very beautiful girl going to join the society, Yukio Nakamura chuckled. She has already filled out the application form for joining the society, and in the future, there will be girls supporting us in the Ghost Society. Isn't this a video game club dressed in ghost skin? Shinji Shinawara was speechless. Are you too sure that girl stayed for 2 days? So we are absorbing supernatural knowledge now, said Kobayashi Hideki, suddenly her eyes lit up. We have found it. Let me Kong. Yukio Nakamura leaned her head forward. Standing behind him, Shinji Shinawara also gazed over, his gaze fixed, his eyes deep. What comes into view is a monotonous image, which is said to be monotonous because the entire picture is covered by a huge eyeball. The white and pupil inside the eyeball are distinct, with bright red blood streaks at the edges. It seems as if the camera is capturing the image with its eyes pressed against it. The entire photo is in a cool color tone, with a hazy feeling that is even more bizarre. I didn't feel much about the story I heard from my classmate Qianhua, but now when I see this photo, I feel a bit scared. Xiaozhao Xiushu looked at this photo for a long time, and there was a chilling feeling of her eyeballs shaking, as if something was looking at her around. Yukio Nakamura nodded in agreement. Take your time, I'll go home first. Shinji Shinawara's face remained unchanged as he patted the shoulders of both of them and went straight out. Now it's time for the club activities to end, and as the sky gradually darkens, he naturally doesn't want to continue staying. Wait, I have to go home too. I'm the same. Although they founded the Ghost Society, they never watch horror movies. At first glance, he was filled with anxiety by this photo. After the three of them arrived at the school gate, Xiaozhao Xiushu suddenly thought of something. He smiled and said, Jinsi, in order to create a good club atmosphere for Qianhui Jr. sister, I think you should go get a haircut. Yukio Nakamura nodded in agreement and said, the hair on your forehead covers your eyes completely, like the male lead in a notebook. It makes us both afraid to have girlfriends, you know. Otherwise, in our first year of high school, Shushu and I would definitely have girlfriends. Shinji Shinawara remained silent. He stroked both sides of his sideburns with both hands, then pulled his forehead back and made a big back. He spoke lightly, are you sure you want me to get a haircut? Hush, Xingtai and Shushu took a deep breath. The two quickly waved their hands, saying that Shinji Shinawara was doing well like this, and that he wouldn't have to cut his hair in the future. Just keep it this way. Not far away, Shinji Shinawara could still hear the voices of the two bad friends behind him. What, have I really known Jinsi for a year? Break off ties with Jinsi, otherwise he will definitely be NTR in the future. I always feel like my mind will be green in the future. Fat tiger, big hero, and talented person are equal to Jinsi. Wait for incomprehensible words. Shinji Shinawara was speechless, and soon he took the tram to the Meguro area. As he approached the apartment, he looked at a large crowd of people gathering ahead. He took a few glances and found that all of them were holding phones, looking up at the sky. He looked up and squinted his eyes to see a girl wearing a red dress and boots sitting at the edge of the rooftop. Jumping off a building to commit suicide. He didn't have any curiosity, just took a glance, didn't linger, and quickly returned to Minghu apartment. He didn't say anything like, I'm back, he doesn't have this habit. And there's no one at home, can you tell the ghost? After returning home, he threw away his backpack and started cooking dinner for himself. After dinner, it's already past 7 p.m. Come to the study, pull out the chair and sit down. Rubbing the pendant around my neck. In the next moment, a ray of light flashed by. A notebook appears on the desk. This notebook is surrounded by a black aura, with a gray and dark light flowing on the surface, emitting an ominous aura. Watching it makes one tremble with fear. Shinji Shinawara was used to it, so he picked up his notebook and opened the first page. Looking at the 6 big characters of Urban Legend Chronicles, without pause, I turned to the second page. Urban Legend. 1. Line of sight in the cracks, legend point. 38988 good and evil points. 280 spiritual power. 0 plus lifetime. 92 days, note 1. The urban legend you wrote will come true in reality. Note 2. People who are influenced by the urban legends you write will benefit you and earn certain legendary points. Note 3. The person who died due to the urban legend you wrote will benefit you and gain certain points of good and evil. Looking at the 92-day lifespan, Shinji Shinawara breathed a sigh of relief. A month ago, he traveled from China to Tokyo, Japan. Over the past month, let him know that this world should be a parallel world. History has not changed, only the details have changed. But this is not the most crucial. After all, in modern society, young people are subjected to various forms of information baptism, and their nerves have long been tempered and toughened. It's not like a dead father or a dead mother, it's just a time travel. Shinji Shinawara is very calm. Moreover, he was an orphan in his past life, and every time he interacted with people online, he was born with an advantage. So for him, traveling is just living in a different place, it's all the same. Importantly, he received a notebook. This notebook is called Urban Legend Chronicles. This notebook was intended to be picked up and put away when he walked between bookcases and saw it fall to the ground while searching for information in the library in his previous life. Unexpectedly, after picking it up, he curiously flipped through a page and saw the 6 words, Urban Legend Chronicles, on the first page, and he traveled through it. I traveled to the library of Sakuraki High School. Since then, he has had very little curiosity. That's also why someone just wanted to jump off a building and went straight home. If it had been before, he would have stopped and watched. Thinking about it, he turned to the 3rd page. There is a noticeable difference from the white and black characters on the first 2 pages, with the 3rd page featuring black and blood characters. The line of sight in the crevice. On March 4, 2020, a photo circulated on the internet. This photo is very strange, covered by a huge eyeball. This is the first urban legend written by Shinji Shinawara, a glimpse through the cracks. As long as the person who has seen this photo and fits the killing rules of urban legends, they will soon see an eyeball in any crevice. This eyeball will stare at the other person through various gaps, constantly distorting their spirit, causing them to collapse, ultimately losing their rationality in choosing suicide. The triggering rule condition is domestic violence. Then he flipped another page, and the 4th page was not blank, but recorded the person who met the urban legend of line of sight in the crevice. As long as the person who has been eye-catching after seeing the photo, their subsequent experiences will be recorded in text on the page of this urban legend chronicle. 1 page, 1 person. End of this chapter. Chapter 4, page 109. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4, page 109. Shinji Shinawara flipped slightly, totaling 109 pages. Most of the pages have ended, representing a person's death. Only a very small part is still persevering, suffering from the torment of sight in the cracks. However, he believes that these people cannot persist for long, because the longer they persist, the more painful their spirit will be. Quickly, he turned to page 109, which recorded a person named Ichiro Nakano. He glanced briefly and knew that he was another person who loved domestic violence. After getting married and having children, the whole family lives in the shadow of each other. As long as there is anything unpleasant at work, I will definitely vent my resentment on my family when I come back. This situation has been ongoing for 10 years. This kind of calamity has also contributed to society. He didn't read much because all the stories recorded on it were about domestic violence. Watching too many of these stories can make people feel depressed. He flipped to the 2nd page, looking at nearly 40,000 legendary points, and couldn't help but ponder whether to write a second urban legend. After all, the urban legend of line of sight between cracks seems to have low efficiency in sending some animals to hell. After more than a month, there were only 109 pages, about 3 people a day. In this way, his efficiency in obtaining points of good and evil will not be high. And the points of good and evil are related to his life, only the points of good and evil can increase his lifespan. When he crossed over, the lifespan displayed in his notebook was 30 days. He naturally dared not experiment whether he would die if it became 0. Although he crossed over, at least his body became younger. So he struggled for a month and increased his lifespan by more than 90 days using points of good and evil. And in the past month, he has also gained some understanding of the acquisition of good and evil points. That is to say, if a person who has committed many evil deeds is killed by the urban legends he has created, he will gain more points of good and evil. As for killing kind-hearted people by mistake, will there be fewer points of good and evil, or will it be directly reversed? He doesn't know about this because he hasn't tried it before. After all, he has only written an urban legend. As for legendary points, they cannot be used for themselves, they can only be used to influence urban legends. General urban legends have regional characteristics, which is also a limitation of urban legends. To break through the limitations of urban legends, one must rely on legendary points. However, he did not conduct much research on the legendary points. Because he has been suffocated by the countdown to death for the past month, his mind is full of how to survive. Now the sword of Damocles has left his head, giving him a little breath. However, I should also write the second urban legend as soon as possible. After all, the speed of killing in the line of sight is too slow. Most people who enjoy domestic violence are those with twisted and suppressed personalities, which cannot be seen from the surface. After being overwhelmed by various pressures in society, it is almost impossible to vent these pressures on family members and let them go online to read urban legends. The story recorded on the back pages of The Line of Sight in the Gap also shows that these people were all tortured to death by chance when they saw that photo, triggering the killing rules of urban legends. His current lifespan is only 92 days, 3 months. It's still too urgent. If it weren't for the insufficient legendary points before, he would have written the second urban legend long ago. Besides, he should also consider how to earn money to support himself. After all, Tokyo is an international metropolis that includes 1/3 of Japan's population. The consumption here is still very high, so he naturally cannot sit idly by. The original owner originally had parents, but now he has become an orphan. Because the original owner's father plans to have a honeymoon after remarriage. As a result, the plane crashed and everyone on board went through a thrilling bungee jump without tying ropes. This relieved him. Although this may not be a good idea, it is still barely acceptable to travel to Tokyo, Japan. It's impossible for him to call him a stranger's mom and dad. Besides, there is also an older sister. But a year ago, due to the plane crash. After the funeral, his nominal sister went back to college. To be honest, he only lived with this sister for a few days and they were still very unfamiliar. Now the other person lives in a university, and they haven't seen each other for a year. They haven't even made a phone call, no different from strangers. So this sister, it's like not having any. It's okay, I'm used to living alone. If it's family or something, it's really a headache. As for relying on that sister to support oneself. He never even had this idea come to mind. And now he's thinking about the afternoon at the club, what's going on with that Shinagawa Jai. Thinking of that girl, Shinji Shinawara couldn't help but frown. The story told by the other party when they joined the company is obviously his line of sight in the crevice. Although he lay on the sofa behind him, he didn't fall asleep at all until the other person finished speaking before he squinted for a while. The story told by Shinagawa Jai is too true, as if it was seen with the other person's own eyes. But as long as you see that eyeball, it's basically hopeless. Although he writes in his notebook about the domestic abusers who see photos, they are constantly being watched. But that's the setting written in the notebook. In reality, although this urban legend is circulating online. But what is circulating is that, seeing this photo, something terrifying will happen. That is to say, unless Chihiro Shinagawa sees it with her own eyes or has come into contact with someone who has seen a photo being stared at by a narrow line of sight, in order to understand. Otherwise, she wouldn't have known so much detail. But he had observed the other person a little before and found that they had a light and relaxed demeanor, and were not at all like children living under domestic violence. Besides that, police. In the past month, apart from a few sporadic struggles, the number of people killed by the line of sight in the cracks has already exceeded 100. So being noticed by the police station is naturally a very normal thing. It seems that the family of Shinagawa Jai is very likely to work at the police station. After thinking it over, Shinji Shinawara breathed a slight sigh of relief. He is not afraid of the people in the police station. After all, he is just the creator of urban legends, and it is not him who killed, so it is impossible to find himself. He is afraid of some young masters, witches, or wizards. Although he has not encountered anyone with extraordinary abilities in the past month. Even he guessed that this world could be an ordinary world. But this is just speculation, not encountering it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And for the past month, he has only been participating in activities at home and school, and whenever he passes by a shrine or temple, he will avoid them from afar. It's just that I'm afraid of being discovered by others about my notebook. This thing concerns his own life, he dare not let anyone know, nor dare he run to shrines or temples to seek help. Because capable people may not necessarily have a kind personality, and their hearts are treacherous. Who knows what they will do after being known by these people? It's better to decide life and death on your own rather than entrusting your fate to others. And the fact also proves that people still have to rely on themselves. After understanding the rules of this notebook, he has now barely settled down. As long as you constantly create urban legends and gain points of good and evil, your lifespan can increase. Even it is also easy to break through the limits of human lifespan with this notebook. In the future, updates will be kept at night. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Sometimes happiness is so simple. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Sometimes happiness is so simple. The next day, Shinji Shinawara sat in front of the computer in the study and yawned. He stayed up all night. It's not about reading or studying, but rather reading some thrilling and terrifying novels to accumulate experience for writing urban legends in the future. This situation has been ongoing for over half a month now. This is also why he goes to bed every time he goes to school, but the teachers and students don't mind anymore. Because it was like this when Shinji Shinawara was in his first year of high school. Of course, it's not like this in junior high school. After all, my father was still alive during that time. After becoming an orphan a year ago, the original owner gave up on himself and went home every day to play online games, and went to bed at school. The teacher understood the situation and wanted to enlighten. But obviously the effect was not good, and over time, I could only sigh helplessly and let it go. After frying 2 poached eggs for myself and brewing a glass of milk. After breakfast, Shinji Shinawara picked up his backpack and prepared to go to school. Oni sauce. As soon as he left and locked the door, he heard a familiar sound. He looked to the side and saw an 11 or 12-year-old loli, but the other person looked at him eagerly with a somewhat disappointed expression. Good morning, Chunzi. Smiling and greeting, Shinji Shinawara also looked to the side. I found some uniformed moving company employees moving things from inside the room. Good morning, Shinyuan Jun. I didn't disturb you, did I? At this moment, a gentle and virtuous wife walked out of the room. Although Naomi Oshima's expression was still haggard, her eyes were bright, much better than before. No, I'm just going to school for class. Shinji Shinawara looked a little strange. Sister Kojima, are you moving? A month ago, Shinji Shinawara had just traveled here and, after gaining some understanding of the world, was thinking about how to write his first urban legend when the neighboring island family made the decision for him. At that time, Naomi Kojima and her pure son and daughter were still victims of domestic violence. At that time, every afternoon when he came back, he could see Nami Kojima with lifeless and numb eyes. Even when the other party goes downstairs to throw garbage, sometimes they accidentally bump into the wall. It's like an empty shell, a soulless walking corpse. And the reason why Shinji Shinawara is familiar with this mother-daughter is because every time the other husband is abusive, Nami Kojima would let Junko out to hide. Because her husband went crazy, even her daughter would beat him up together. Once, her husband chased after her and wanted to drag Chunzi back. He happened to be going out to the supermarket to buy something when he saw Chunzi crying and shouting. At that time, he was in a restless mood and beat up the other party before reporting to the police. But after all, it was the family business of the small island family, and the police only intervened for a while before they intervened. During those days, Chunzi would always come to his house to take shelter. It was also on those nights that he wrote "Sight in the Gap." Of course, he didn't immediately show the photo to the husband of Xiaodao, but after a week, he inadvertently let the other person take a glance. At this glance, in just 3 days, news came that Xiaodao's husband had committed suicide at the company. And without her husband's violence, Naomi Oshima gradually regained her anger, and recently she can occasionally see a smile on her face. As for the sadness of her husband's death, perhaps there was before. But every fist and foot interaction is a passing of emotions. Naomi Kojima has long lost all her emotions towards her husband. Thanks for the care of God Yuanjun. Naomi Kojima bowed slightly, her eyes were alert, and she smiled. I'm going to take Junko back to go home. After all, the rent in Muhei district is a little expensive. Shinji Shinawara nodded, indeed. The housing prices in Meguro Ward are among the top 5 in Tokyo and are gradually increasing every year. Fortunately, the father of the original owner has already paid off the mortgage for the house he lives in. Otherwise, he probably would have to move as well. Do you need any help? No need, having a moving company is already enough. Naomi Kojima looked at Shinji Shinawara carrying a backpack and hurriedly said, "It's getting late. It's almost time for class, so hurry up and go to school. Junko, come and say goodbye to your older brother." Junko looked at Shinji Shinawara with reluctance. At the age of 12, she knew that this separation might never see her older brother again. Thinking about it, tears flowed in his eyes as he gazed at Shinji Shinawara with watery eyes. His voice choked up and he said, "Goodbye Onizu. Goodbye, if you have any worries, you can call your brother." With a slight smile, there is no banquet that never ends, and Shinji Shinawara didn't say much. He carried his backpack and entered the elevator. As the elevator door closed, he could hear Junko's loud crying and Nami Kojima's comforting voice. For some reason, Shinji Shinawara's mood suddenly became cheerful. I have been watching the stories of those perpetrators from notebooks before, which makes me feel depressed. But now that we have learned from reality that the perpetrator has died, it can be considered as saving a family in disguise, and his mood has improved a lot. Sometimes happiness is just that simple. As for Chunzi, maybe the other party will forget him after he goes back to his hometown to go to a new school and meets new friends. Thinking about it, Shinji Shinawara felt a bit lost in his heart. After all, he had traveled through before, enduring the pressure of death, and it was the obedient Junko who helped him relax. Soon, he arrived at the school. As usual, when the class started, he slept directly on the table. He sat in the back seat, and the teacher was too lazy to bother him. Sleep time passed quickly, and when she heard the bell for school, Shinji Shinawara stretched lazily and tidied up before leaving the classroom door. Ghost Society is a club that the original owner joined a year ago. He never left the company even after traveling, after all. Isn't he good at a small game video studio? You can also relax your tense spirit in the club. Hello senior, can I ask you a question? Arriving at the club classroom building, before even going upstairs, I heard a sound. Turning slightly, it was a first-grade boy. The reason for knowing the grade is because the uniforms of students in each grade of Sakuraki High School are slightly different. The brooch on the chest of the first-grade school uniform is orange-red, the second grade is bright yellow, and the third grade is deep blue. And female school uniforms are reflected in ribbons. What's up? Shinji Shinawara said calmly. Excuse me, senior. Do you know which floor the Ghost Society is on? Upon hearing these words, he looked up and down at the other person and found that they were wearing glasses, with a slightly round face and a wise gaze flashing in their eyes from time to time. Come with me, Shinji Shinawara said directly. You're lucky, I happen to be a member of the Ghost Society. Upon hearing this, the Yuzaki Hiren was pleasantly surprised and quickly followed in the footsteps of Shinji Shinawara. End of this chapter. 6. What a great world of copywriting in Chapter 6, it's a pity. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. What a great world of copywriting, it's a pity. Although Shinji Shinawara is nicknamed the gloomy man in school, he himself is not gloomy. Everyone thinks he is gloomy, just because his hair is relatively long, almost covering his eyes. In the absence of seeing the emotions in Shinji Shinawara's eyes, students naturally began to consciously brainstorm. It's just that Shinji Shinawara doesn't want to be eye-catching, otherwise, as long as he straightens his hair, he's like a walking cannon barrel. After talking to Shinji Shinawara, Hiren Yuzaki learned each other's names and breathed a sigh of relief. He thought the other person was not easy to get along with. And Shinji Shinawara also knew that the Yuzaki people were looking for the high-ranking girl who joined the club yesterday. According to a person from Yuzaki C, he and Jai Shinagawa were childhood sweethearts. He has always had a good impression of Jai and plans to confess to each other in high school. The parents of the two families also hope that they can enter the marriage hall. What can Shinji Shinawara say? I can only cheer for the other party. As for why he said so much to himself when he first met, he didn't even need to think about it. High school students are really easy to understand. Upon arriving at the ghost department, Shinji Shinawara pushed the door open and entered. He habitually wanted to turn on the lights, but found the room bright. The curtains that had never been opened before were also opened early at this time. Looking inside, one can see two unattainable salted fish sitting in front of a computer desk under the sunlight, as well as a beautiful girl named Chihiro Shinagawa sitting on the sofa reading a book. As the door was pushed, 3 people inside looked at it. Why are you here, Hiren? Didn't you go to Chunrikyu school? Said Chihiro Shinagawa in surprise upon hearing about Chunrikyu school. The eyes of Yukino and Hideki, who were originally seeking help, became surprised. Their gaze swept over Shinji Shinawara and turned to the round-faced boy wearing glasses behind them. You should know that Chunrikyu High School is a key high school in Tokyo, and generally only the best students can enter. I transferred to another school, said the person from Yuzaki C, holding his glasses with his hand. He smiled and said, although Chunrikyu is good, the competition there is too fierce, the pressure is too great, and it doesn't feel suitable for me. You know, I always like to balance work and rest. Shinji Shinawara glanced sideways. His impression of the Yuzaki people just now was that they were experienced lickers. After all, they had all come from other high schools. I didn't expect the other party to be quite reserved. He looked at Shingtai and Shoshu and pointed to each other. This junior student is going to join the society. Upon hearing this, Shingtai and Shoshu's surprised gaze became scrutinized. Boy wants to join the club. What kind of beautiful dreams do you have? And the other party clearly knows the Qianhua junior sister, how could they possibly let the other party join the club? Thinking about it, Xiaozao Shoshu looked at the people from Yuzaki C and said slowly, if you want to join the club, tell a horror story that we haven't heard of before. If the quality is good, you can join the club. Upon hearing this, the person from Yuzaki C looked at Chihiro Shinagawa and saw him nodding. After thinking for a moment, he spoke up and said, I don't know about the 3 senior students. Do you know about a recent photo circulating online? Hiren, I told this story yesterday. Let's change it, said Chihiro Shinagawa with a light cough. This. Yuzaki Hiren suddenly felt tricky as he looked at Yutaka Nakamura and Hideki Kobayashi, who were not as talkative as senior Shinawara. He looked around a little and his eyes lit up. Two seniors, can you come out with me for a moment? There's something I'd like to talk to you about. After hesitating for a while, Shintai and Shushu followed Yuzaki Hiren to the door. However, Shinagawa Shinji was too lazy to pay attention to this entry test. When he approached the computer, he casually spoke, "Shinagawa, can you pull the curtains? The computer is reflective." Sigh. Chihiro Shinagawa was still curious about what Hiren was going to do. Upon hearing this, she quickly stood up and pulled the curtains up. "I'm sorry, I didn't know the computer was reflective." Neither of the senior students mentioned it earlier. Thinking of the gaze that Shintai and Shushu had just turned to for help, it turned out that these two were just licking dogs. Shinji Shinawara nodded and stopped talking to the other person. He opened the coding software and began typing with a crackling sound. Shinagawa Jai listened to the sound and looked over. She was a little curious and said, "Senior Shinawara, are you writing a novel?" With a casual response, Shinji Shinawara waved his hand. "You go read, don't disturb me." Okay, Chihiro Shinagawa obediently sat on the sofa, thinking to herself, it seemed that this senior Shinawara was not easy to get along with. Shinji Shinawara is indeed writing novels. Although he traveled for a month, his predecessor, the year of self-abandonment, spent money like water, and now his savings are limited. He naturally won't live a decadent life like his predecessor did, and must plan for the future. But now he is just a high school student. Although Sakuraki High School can go out to work, the school has also explained that it is necessary to ensure grades. So after careful consideration, Shinji Shinawara decided to become a light novel writer. After all, Japan in this world is different from its past, with fewer light novels and comics. What a great world of copywriting. Unfortunately, Shinji Shinawara hasn't watched many dramas since he started working, and the plot of classic dramas from the past has long been forgotten over time. Even after becoming a social animal, I played fewer games. Usually it's done through cloud clearance. If you think the game is good, you can purchase it and store it. As for playing it, that is impossible. Moreover, after traveling through time, he did not have the special talent of having a deep memory, being able to recall the plot he had watched subconsciously, or being unforgettable. He is almost completely blank about light novels and comics. Wen Chao Gong. Copy a fart. So he can only think and write for himself. Of course, the main reason why I want to become a light novel writer is actually because of my notebook. When he wrote his first urban legend, he wrote it 7 or 8 times before it was recognized in his notebook, making the line of sight between cracks come true in reality. Because most urban legends have no beginning or end, mainly used to spread terror. There are few urban legends, it is a complete story. To write in a notebook, it is necessary to have a clear beginning and end, detailed settings, clear abilities of ghosts and monsters, and logical writing. This is difficult for Shinji Shinawara. That's why he wants to write light novels, mainly to exercise his ability to write urban legends. If he could make money, it would be better. If he couldn't, he wouldn't have any disappointment either. And this is also the reason why, although he has over 40,000 legendary points, he has not yet started writing the second urban legend. 1 or 2 minutes later, the 3 people outside came in. This breathed a sigh of relief for Shinagawa Jai, who was in the same room as Senior Shinawara. The atmosphere was so oppressive. Congratulations to Hiren for passing the entrance examination. Come to Hiren and fill out the application form. As soon as Shintai entered the door, she picked up the application form and handed it to Hiren Yuzaki. Upon hearing the sound, Shinji Shinawara looked at the 3 people talking and laughing in surprise. He thought that the people of Yusuji Sea would be exhausted, but he didn't know how he used any means to join the army. Kobayashi Hideki sat down beside her and saw the expression on Shinji Shinawara's face. He chuckled and looked excited, but spoke softly. The sea man promised me and Katsuya that he will give us the rare Ringura figurine from his family tomorrow. It's a rare item that was out of print 5 years ago. I see. Sure enough, the wife of the dead house can only be a anime paper person. Of course, it's just a condition for joining the ministry, Xiaozhao Shoshu said mysteriously. And I have received important news that Qianhua Jr. and Hairen are childhood sweethearts. Aren't you two feeling cold? At first glance, you may not have a deep understanding of ACG. When did the Bamboo Horse series win over the Heavenly Descent series? The Sea Man is already a loser. End of this chapter. Chapter 7, Second Urban Legend. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7, Second Urban Legend. 1 hour later, the club was filled with joy. Although Xingtai and Shushu treat Hairen as rivals in love, they are both relatively simple high school students. As they chatted, they became familiar with each other and began to call each other brothers. Although they say they want to take over Shinagawa Jai, in the end, it's just a desire for their body. Now that others have joined the club, their thoughts are gradually fading away in their hearts. After all, dead houses are pure and kind. In a harmonious atmosphere, a few people quickly started chatting. By the way, do you know what happened yesterday? Yuzaki Hairen noticed that Chihiro couldn't connect, picked up her phone, and quickly spoke up. Yesterday, a girl jumped off a building and committed suicide. Isn't this very normal? I remember Japan seems to have a holy land for suicide. It's different. Yuzaki Hairen placed his phone on the coffee table, making it visible to everyone. When this girl committed suicide, she was wearing a red dress and boots. Red skirt and red boots. A few people have shown interest. Red clothes were originally quite ordinary, but it's unusual to wear them when committing suicide. According to the forum, this girl seemed to have been bullied and ended up doing something foolish because she couldn't bear it. Oh, this girl jumped off a building in the Mohei area. I remember Jinsi seems to live in the Mohei area. Indeed, it was in the dark area. Yesterday when I went home, I took a look at the scene. At this moment, Shinji Shinawara took off his headphones. He had been typing for an hour and was ready to let his brain rest. Coincidentally, he heard everyone talking about a girl's suicide and immediately spoke up. As he spoke, he glanced at the photo and said calmly, "I suggest you don't talk about this thing." Seeing everyone looking at him curiously, Shinji Shinawara continued, "After all, who would a typical suicide person wear clothes like this? People who wear clothes like this and commit suicide may have suffered significant physical and psychological harm during their lifetime. So, is this wearing this to curse those who hurt her?" Almost so, Shinji Shinawara nodded. In my past life, a Weibo influencer explained this kind of thing. Many melon-eating people do not understand the thoughts of suicide victims. Do they think that if they want to commit suicide, they will not find a wilderness? Must it be in a crowded place? But these people don't understand that some suicide victims are harmed during their lifetime, and various pressures force them to choose this path. Only by committing suicide in crowded places can they attract social attention. Suicide victims hope that society can help them regain justice. And dressing like the girl in the photo must have been done with great resentment. When alive, this girl dare not do anything. But she hopes that after her death, she can transform into a fierce ghost to seek revenge, otherwise why must she dress like this? This is also one of the reasons why Shinji Shinawara did not stay after seeing it yesterday. Anyway, it is better to believe in its existence than to believe in its absence. After all, isn't the notebook he holds the ability to create ghosts and monsters? Thinking about this, Shinji Kanahara looked at the photo and his expression moved. But he didn't say much. After looking at the time, he stood up and said, "It's getting late, I have to go home." Together. Soon, Shinji Shinawara bid farewell to the people at the school gate and the club. Before walking for a few minutes, 3 students wearing Sakuraki High School's 3rd grade uniforms were found in a small alley, surrounded by a first-grade student. Seeing this, Shinji Shinawara gave a feed to the alley. Quickly, 3 third-grade students looked behind them with a slight change in expression. Shinjen. Kuchi, are you bullying someone again? Shinji Shinawara put down his backpack and moved his muscles. He smiled and looked familiar. How about adding me? Seeing this, Kenji Keek, the third-grade student who was leading the way, his face changed. He snorted coldly, pulled the 2 attendants, and glared at Shinji Shinawara with hatred. Let's go. When he came out, Shinji Shinawara moved his step slightly and bumped into the opponent, causing Kyuki Kenji to stumble. Looking at Shinji Shinawara's provocative gaze, Kenji Kuchi opened his mouth and threatened to curse, but in the end, he persevered. The other 2 attendants also silently didn't say anything. They are all high school seniors now. They have dealt with Shinji Shinawara countless times and have also entered the health room several times. Shinji Shinawara is still very famous in the bad circle of Sakuraki High School, nothing else. When Shinji Shinawara was a freshman in the first year of high school, he was framed by the 3 of them into this small alley and blackmailed to borrow money. As a result, Shinji Shinawara sent 3 of them directly to the hospital. Of course, Shinji Shinawara also suffered significant injuries. At that time, Shinji Shinawara had just passed away, and his mood was very suppressed. Someone came knocking on him to beat him up, and most of them had done their best. However, although he had a good workout, he was still an ordinary person after all. 1 hit and free is already the limit. Afterwards, Kenji Keek also found other villains to beat up Shinji Shinawara. But every time Shinji Shinawara is beaten down, several people get injured. Over time, they felt that Shinji Shinawara was tough and never harassed him again. On the contrary, some people still admire the other party very much and want to play bad roles with Shinji Shinjen, but they are beaten back. The bad circle at Sakuraki High School thinks this guy is crazy. At that time, when Shinji Shinawara traveled back and accepted the memories of his predecessor, he still admired his predecessor very much. And when he traveled over, facing the threat of the limited 1-month lifespan of his notebook, he was also under great pressure. Fighting is sometimes a way to relieve stress, so over the past month, Shinji Shinawara has been bullying these bad guys a lot. It's boring. Shinji Kamehara pursed his lips as he watched Kenji Kuchi endure it. Seeing the 3 of them leave, Shinji Shinawara carried his backpack and left directly. Throughout, he never went to see the bullied students in the alley. Thank you. When the small mountain in the alley looked up, everyone had already left. He walked out of the alley carrying his backpack and could only see the back of Shinji Shinawara. When Shinji Shinawara arrived at the Meguro area by tram, he had already forgotten about this little incident. Or rather, something has already occupied his mind. Returning home, Shinji Shinawara went to the study and opened his computer, checking the girl who jumped off the building in a red dress and boots yesterday. Originally, Shinji Shinawara didn't know how to write the second urban legend, but by the time he was in the club classroom, he had already figured it out and thought clearly along the way. Thinking, Shinji Shinawara opened the notebook on his desk. He flipped to a blank page, picked up the pen next to him, dipped it in ink, and wrote directly. On April 8, 2020, at midnight. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. New Neighbors. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. New Neighbors. On April 8, at midnight, a very strange post appeared on the 2CH forum, which could not be deleted or edited. It was immediately placed on the top of the forum, and the content of the post circulated an urban legend about a girl from hell. The Hellgirl is a series from a past life, telling the story of the Hellgirl Yen Mo who loves to help people eliminate resentment. He only watched a few episodes in his previous life, but he was also deeply impressed. Because the first episode tells the story of a hellish girl helping a girl who has been bullied by verbal violence to eliminate resentment. While thinking, Shinji Shinawara was also refining the setting of this urban legend. As mentioned earlier, typical urban legends are endless stories that spread terror and are used to scare people. And if he wants urban legends to come true, then the urban legends he writes must have a beginning and an end. This is not an increase in his workload, but one of the rules of this urban legend chronicle. Even though he has already written a piece called Sight in the Gap, his writing experience is still insufficient. This is also the reason why he chose the Hellgirl. There are ready-made ones that he can apply without having to think about them himself. By the way, accumulate experience for continuing to write urban legends in the future. But even so, he made multiple deletions, modifications, and revisions, and it took him over 4 hours to complete it. After spending more than 10 minutes checking, he put an end to this urban legend. At the moment when the period came to an end, the paper automatically made a gurgling sound when there was no wind. Seeing this, Shinji Shinawara breathed a sigh of relief, indicating that Notepad acknowledged this urban legend. In the next moment, the white paper was enveloped by black light, and the deep black eroded the white paper. Shinji Shinawara's eyes were bright as he saw that the paper, which had just been written in black and white, had turned into black and bloody characters. Blood-colored handwriting is deeply engraved on the paper. At the end, a bloody handwriting gradually appeared. Please select the area affected by this urban legend. Shinji Shinawara glanced around and found that there were many regional choices. In addition to the prefectures of Japan, there are also counties in the United Kingdom, states in the United States, and regions in France. He didn't look much and just checked the back of Japan. Then there was no movement. Seeing this, he remained silent and chose to tick behind Tokyo. Writing completed, in an instant, the entire black paper with blood characters gradually disappeared. When the last character disappeared, blood gradually flowed at the top of the black paper, transforming into 4 large characters. Hellgirl. Another urban legend has come true from his hands. To be honest, Shinji Shinawara has no sense of reality at all. There is a feeling of playing games. Thinking about it, he flipped to the second page. Urban Legend 2, Sight in the Gap, Hellgirl, Legend Point. 3790 Good and Evil Points. 680 Spiritual Power. 0 plus Lifetime. 99 days. In the past few days, my gaze caught sight of more than a dozen animals and began to peep at them from behind. So his legendary point had already exceeded 40,000 before. It seems that I just wrote the urban legend, Hellgirl, which consumed over 40,000 legendary points. As for why Hellgirls cannot influence the whole of Japan, it is obviously due to a lack of legendary points. This is a pity. In terms of good and evil, he has increased his lifespan. As for the so-called spiritual power, he did not study it because increasing spiritual power also requires consuming good and evil points. Let's see later. He looked at the time and found that it was already past 10 in the evening. And today is April 7th, which means that by midnight, it will be the time when the urban legend of Hellgirl begins to spread. Thinking about it, he came to the kitchen and made himself some food. After finishing dinner and tidying up, it was almost midnight. He came to the study and opened the 2ch forum. This forum is similar to Qinglong in China and is a gathering place for a large number of Japanese netizens. A mix of netizens, including scholars, students, staff, and fanatics, gather together with a variety of people, constantly presenting exciting themes every day. At midnight, a post that had just been posted appeared on the main forum and was immediately topped. Does Hellgirl really exist? However, this post has just appeared, and even if it reaches the top, everyone hasn't paid much attention. Although I had already experienced it when I finished writing my first urban legend, what I have written now really appears in reality and still makes Shinji Shinawara feel magical. But he quickly calmed down. Because when he wrote his first urban legend, The Line of Sight in a Crack, the eyeball photo appeared on this forum with rumors that, as long as he saw this photo, something terrifying would happen. However, if we continue to write urban legends in the future, we cannot put them on this forum anymore. After all, it's okay to do it once or twice. If it's all the same, it would arouse suspicion and evoke associations. He carefully browsed the content of this post. Although it was brief, it was exactly the same as what he wrote on his notepad. After watching it, he found that no one had replied yet, and he didn't care either. Shinji Shinawara logged into the Hellgirl website again and found that it does indeed exist. Seeing this, he didn't do any dirty tricks, yawned, and went straight to bed. The next morning, while Shinji Shinawara was preparing breakfast in the kitchen, he heard a ding-dong sound and someone rang the doorbell. Shinji Shinawara arrived at the entrance and glanced through the cat's eye. Standing at the door was a thin middle-aged man wearing black clothes with slightly messy hair. He opened the door and looked at the other person in confusion. "Are you?" "Hello, it's Shin-Yuan-sang. I'm Matsunaga who just moved in, and we'll be neighbors from now on." Mr. Matsunaga saw the door open, bowed slightly, and then handed the gift he was carrying with a cautious and subtle smile. "This is a specialty of my hometown, please accept it." For Mr. Matsunaga, who knows his surname, Shinji Shinawara is not surprised. After all, there is a label of his surname pasted at the entrance. He hesitated for a moment and accepted the other party's gift. "In the future, I will become a neighbor." If the other party can come and show goodwill, it is obvious that they value the neighborhood relationship very much. This also made Shinji Shinawara nod slightly, and compared to his evil neighbor, Mr. Matsunai in front of him was clearly very easy-going. Seeing Shinji Shinawara accept it, Mr. Matsunai smiled with relief and said, "Since that's the case, I won't disturb Shinawara-sang anymore. I'll go visit other people and ask for more guidance in the future." "Thank you, Mr. Matsunai." Upon hearing this, Shinji Shinawara didn't exchange much greetings either. He is still a student. After breakfast, he still has to go to class. End of this chapter. 9. Does Hellgirl really exist in Chapter 9? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Does Hellgirl really exist in Chapter 9? In the morning, Qinglong Private High School. Xiangtian Dadi arrived at the school carrying his backpack. He looked at the school gate with a look of resistance. At the entrance of a typical school, students are whispering and chattering. But some students from Qinglong Private High School wear school uniforms, with a nervous expression and a hurried demeanor, rarely talking side by side. The atmosphere is still very quiet. But soon Xiangtian Dadi heard the sound of conversation, and in the blink of an eye, there were several students walking together. But at a glance at that hair color, he knew that these were all delinquent youths. After a brief glance, he didn't see the familiar figure and breathed a slight sigh of relief. Then he quickened his pace and walked into the school, only to hear shouts from behind before he even reached the class. "Yo! The earth!" Upon hearing the familiar voice, Sagata Dadi's body instinctively trembled for a moment. He dared not walk anymore, but raised a humble smile and turned his head to look back. "Udu brother." Iwahii Yudu stepped forward and pulled Xiangtian Dadi with a smile. "Today we're going to the video game street. It's your turn to treat us." Xiangtian Dadi hesitated for a moment, "But Yudo, I already treated you a few days ago." "In order, it should be you, Yudo." "What are you saying?" Xiangtian Dadi felt the gaze of some students beside him and said obediently, "I'm sorry, brother Yudo, I made a mistake. Today is my treat." The gaze beside him was like various forms of torture, trampling his dignity in the mud and dust, making him feel suffocated and a bit breathless. Iwahii Yudu snorted coldly as he looked at the land of Sagata. Suddenly, something came to his mind and a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. He said something in his ear. After hearing this, Xiangtian Dadi's pupils shrank and he looked at Izuki Yudo with an incredulous expression in his eyes. "See you in the afternoon," Iwahii Yudo chuckled. After the trio of Iwahii Yudo walked away, Sagata Dadi slowly returned to the classroom. Many boys in the class show a mocking expression when they see Sagata Dadi. However, the other party is a prey of Iwakura Yuzuki, and according to the rules, they did not bully the other party. As a bad school, Qinglong High School naturally has no one to listen to during classes. The noise in the classroom never stops. During lunch break, Daichi Sagata went to the small shop to buy lunch. He dared not go to the cafeteria because the three of Yenhei Yudu would eat in the cafeteria every time, and if they were seen, they would probably bully him again. Returning to the classroom, Sagata Dottie breathed a sigh of relief. Ah, really? It's true, this is a post that appeared on the 2CH forum last night, and it's still on the top. I heard that as long as you enter the name of the person you hate on the Hellcom website, Hellgirl will send that person to hell. This is too scary, isn't it? But it looks fake at first glance. If that's the case, wouldn't society be in chaos? And if it's true, wouldn't most of our class go to hell? Poochie, that's what you're saying. Hellgirl. Xiangtian Dottie's ears twitched, and he turned his head to see two unscrupulous girls with yellow hair staining their fingers talking. He opened his mouth, but in the end, he didn't speak. Instead, he finished his lunch and sat in his seat, his eyes empty, not knowing what he was thinking. In the afternoon, the bell rang for the end of school. After the teacher called out to finish class, Hinata Dottie just walked out of the classroom door carrying her backpack. As soon as he left, three figures stopped him in front of him. Iwahii Udu saw a tremble in his body subconsciously, and he picked up a cigarette and said, "Let's go to the video game street." Xiangtian Dottie didn't speak and was taken to the video game street by three people. After playing around for a while, Iwahii Udo bid farewell to the other two people, and then he leaned on the shoulder of Sagata Dottie and grinned, "Dottie, I want to visit your house today. I've been a brother for so long, but I don't know where your house is." Upon hearing this, Xiangtian Dottie couldn't help but think of something and his face turned pale. He opened his mouth, but in the end, he didn't say anything. He lowered his head and led the way ahead. You don't need to go see it, but Xiangtian Dottie can tell that Yuda must be showing a proud and arrogant smile behind him. Soon, Sagata Dottie arrived home. He stood at the door, but didn't open it for a long time. With a frown, Yudu said in a gloomy tone, "What's going on?" Still hesitating. "Then you shouldn't have brought me home. You're committing a crime." Yoshida's face turned pale, her fist clenched tightly in the sleeve of her school uniform. "You probably won't say it," said Izuki Yodo with a friendly smile and a threat in his eyes. In his heart of despair, Xiangtian Dottie opened his door. After entering the door, Xiangtian Dottie breathed a deep sigh of relief in his heart. He whispered, "There's no one at home, you can leave." "I can wait." Yenhei Yudu looked at the living room slowly and sneered, "Your house is really shabby." Xiangtian Dottie's face turned red. A few minutes later, the sound of an open door rang outside the door. Before Sagata Dottie could say anything, Izuki Yudo couldn't help but lick his lips and said, "You go back to your room." Xiangtian Dottie opened his mouth and was about to say something when he saw Iwahii Yudo staring at him fiercely and coldly saying, "Why don't you get out of here?" When Sagata Dottie went upstairs, he could faintly hear the sound of conversation below. Sigh. "Are you?" "Hello Auntie, I'm a friend of Dottie. Dottie just went out and said he wants to buy some snacks at the supermarket to entertain me. I can't persuade him no matter how hard I try, so I can only wait here." "Really? Then you sit down quickly. Dottie has friends at school and didn't tell me before. You can stay today and I'll make something delicious to entertain you." "This isn't good, is it?" "It's okay." Xiangtian Dottie clenched his fist tightly, his face flushed and his breathing was rapid. Returning to the room, Sagata Dottie opened his computer and logged into the 2CH forum. Soon, Sagata Dottie found a post. Or rather, this post is currently being topped. "Does Hellgirl really exist?" Clicking on the post, he took a quick breath and his eyes lit up with hope. The Hell communication that can only be accessed at midnight. If you fill in the name of the person who cannot be appeased here, the Hellgirl will appear and send the person you hate into the abyss of hell. He glanced at the reply. What new urban legend is it? Hellgirl. Is there a new series that an animation company wants to produce? It's currently being promoted. I just went to search and found out that this Hell communication website actually exists, but it seems to be inaccessible now. I definitely can't access it, after all, it's midnight, laughs, don't you think it's strange? The nickname of the poster seems to be a bunch of garbled characters. I remember the 2CH forum, can't you use garbled characters to name it? Is it because the moderator is making extra money and creating gimmicks for commercial companies? Are they still at the top? I plan to give it a try tonight. I've been constantly being run on by my colleagues lately, and I happen to want to kill him. Most urban legends are ghosts and monsters. Although there are no ghosts or gods in this world, it is still recommended not to try them randomly. Access is only available at midnight. Xiangtian Dadi slammed the table hard, and now he wants Iwahei Yudo to die. However, Sagata Dadi also knows that even at midnight, this so-called hellish girl is just an urban legend, as those replies said, it must be a promotional tool of the entertainment agency. End of this chapter. 10, Chapter 10 Hell Communication. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10 Hell Communication. I don't know what came to my mind, but the weather was unpredictable on the land of Sagata. He pushed the door open and was surprised to hear no sound downstairs. He immediately went downstairs and found that the living room was empty. After arriving at the kitchen, he saw his mother cutting vegetables while Iwahei Yudo was quietly passing by, clearly planning to launch a surprise attack. Iwahei. Yoshitaka suddenly spoke up, startling Iwahei Yudo and causing Yoshitaka to turn around. The earth is back. Yaji smiled gently and then saw Iwahei Yudo behind her. She couldn't help but wonder, Yudo, why did you come to the kitchen? I want to help Auntie, Iwahei Yudo forced a smile and spoke. No need, you don't know how to cook, so you can save me trouble. Sagata Dadi clearly understood something, and his face was calm. Come out for a moment, I have something to say to you. Quickly, Iwahei Yudo came to the living room with a gloomy face. Before he could speak, he saw Sagata Dadi staring at him with bloodshot eyes, which surprised him. Get out of my house, said Yoshida in a hoarse voice. Upon seeing this, Iwakura Yudo sneered inwardly. He knew he might have gone too far today, causing the other party to hit the bottom and rebound. Now it's better not to stimulate him anymore, as he already knows his address. With this thought in mind, Iwahei Yudo quickly raised his hand in a surrender gesture and said, okay. Don't get excited. Actually, I just wanted to tease you. I didn't expect you to be so funny. As he spoke, he patted Xiangtian Dadi's shoulder and said, calm down. See you at school tomorrow. Seeing Yenhei Yudo walking decisively, the emotions that had just risen in Xiangtian Dadi suddenly became low, and there was a feeling of strength hitting the cotton, which made his inner feelings even more oppressive. He looked at the figure of Iwahei Yudo disappearing at the corner, and his bloodshot eyes suddenly darkened. At night, with the lights turned off, Satoshi Sagata sat in front of the computer in his bedroom. It was obvious that there were posts about Hellgirl on the 2CH forum inside the computer. Dong dong dong, Earth, do you have anything you want to say to your mother? What happened in the afternoon clearly made Yasushi Sagata feel something was wrong, but even if she asked during dinner, her son didn't say anything. No, don't bother me anymore. Xiangtian Dadi looked at the time and spoke impatiently. If you have any worries, you can tell your mother. Yasushi Sagata sighed lightly outside the door. She knew her son must be hiding something from her, but she did not force him to tell her. Xiangtian Dadi didn't speak again, listening to the faint footsteps, he knew that his mother had returned to her room. He stared at the computer screen with eerie eyes and looked at the time in the lower right corner. Midnight. Sadako took a deep breath and immediately searched for the website of Hellgirl, then pressed the confirm button. In the next moment, a blood-red flame rose up. Shinji stared closely at this scene. Before Sadako Earth could react, a blood-red flame splattered away, but in just 1 second, a string of words appeared. I will eliminate your resentment for you. Under the handwriting, there is a blank box. Under the blank box, there are 2 words for delivery. That is to say, as long as you fill in the name of the person you hate in the blank box, the Hellgirl will help you fulfill your wish and send that person to hell. At this moment, Shinji's eyes were fixed on him, his heart pounding, his face flushed with excitement, and his breathing was rapid and he was panting. Is this true? He entered a 4-character name. Shinji trembled with his hands and was about to click send, but he didn't have the courage to confirm for a long time. Most urban legends are strange. Although there are no ghosts or gods in this world, it is still recommended not to try them randomly. Although I am an atheist, there are some things that I would rather believe in than try. This hellish girl must have been fabricated by some people. Non-human beings in urban legends are harmful to others. How could they help you seek revenge? Don't delude yourself. If it's true, if you really fill it out, maybe the Hellgirl will make you die. Shinji remembered the replies from browsing the post before and found them very reasonable. Most urban legends are ghosts and ghosts that harm people and do not help them at all. But Shinji fiercely clicked to deliver the letter. People like me, even if they survive, are just the scum of society. I don't even have the courage to resist violence. If this hellish girl can help me, what if I give her this life? 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. As time ticked by, Hinata looked at the 3 words, delivered, displayed on the computer screen, but there was no further change, and for some reason, she was disappointed in her heart. Where's the girl from hell? Where is it? Sure enough. Is it fake? Shinji gave a bitter smile and realized that she had gone crazy believing in urban legends. Are you looking for me? Shinji suddenly felt a blur in front of him. When he opened his eyes again, it was supposed to be the night sky. Suddenly, under the shining red sunset, the riverbank was printed with blood red. Sadako instinctively looked ahead and saw a huge, unknown tree with a young girl standing under it. Black long hair hanging straight down, a delicate but sickly white face, with blood-red eyes that are different from humans, dressed in black kimono, with the other shore flowers printed on the clothes. It is enchanting and eerie. Are you a girl from hell? Really surprisingly, it's true. Shinji's body trembled slightly, and he was afraid. The girl in front of him was obviously not human. After all, whose eyes are blood red? He always has a chilling feeling when being stared at by the other person. And he was just at home, in the blink of an eye, in a strange place. Shinji's mind is in chaos. The standing hellish girl, however, did not answer his words. She approached Sadako and then reached out her hand, whispering, "Take it with you." Shinji looked at the hellish girl in front of him, his eyes showing fear. He instinctively took a step back and then looked at what was in the other person's hand. That was a scarecrow the size of a palm, with a thin red line around his neck. The red line fluttered in the wind, appearing mysterious under the blood-red sunset. Shinji trembled and took the scarecrow. Upon seeing this, the hellish girl spoke with her unique voice, "Unleashing the red rope means that you and I have officially reached a contract. The person you hate will be instantly exiled to hell. However, after avenging you, you will also have to pay the price yourself." Upon hearing this, Yoshitaka looked up at his blood-red eyes, as if a blood-red vortex was about to draw his soul. He swallowed and said, "What's the cost? After completing the contract, your soul will also fall into hell." "I'm going to hell too." Shinji gritted his teeth and clenched his fist, clearly feeling extremely uneasy in his heart. Curse others to harm oneself. However, that is what happens after your death. After death, your soul will not be able to ascend to the pure land of bliss, and will forever experience pain and confusion in hell. Xiangtian Dadi listened to these words and stared blankly at the scarecrow with a red rope tied in his hand. For a long time, as soon as he looked up and was about to speak, he realized that he was already in his bedroom. Whether to pull off the red string or not is up to you to decide. The ethereal voice of a hellish girl came to her ears, and Satoshi sat on the bed, staring at the scarecrow with a blank expression on her face. End of this chapter.